Imagine tens of thousands of men and women leaving their homes, marching across continents for a cause greater than themselves. Imagine kings and beggars side by side, drawn into deserts they had never seen, chasing a holy city most would never reach alive. What could drive Europe into 2 centuries of war? What secrets were whispered in the shadows of councils? What battles carved history into stone and blood? This is the story of the Crusades. The year is 1095. In the heart of France, the bells of Clermont toll, and a pope's voice thunders across Christendom. Deus vult. God wills it. The Crusades will span nearly 2 centuries, a saga of faith, power, and blood, waged between cross and crescent. Kings and peasants alike will march thousands of miles, face deserts, disease, and steel, and leave a trail of battles that would shape the medieval world. These are the battles that define the Crusades. 95. Council of Clermont, the spark. In the town of Clermont, Pope Urban II rises before an assembly of nobles, clergy, and peasants. His words are carefully chosen, but thunder with passion. He speaks of Eastern Christians suffering under Turkish rule, of holy places desecrated, of pilgrims attacked on the road to Jerusalem. But his message is more than lament. It is a call to arms. He promises absolution of sins, eternal reward, and honor beyond the grave. Let those who have been fighting their brothers now fight the infidel. Let those who have been robbers become soldiers of Christ. The crowd roars in response, crying, Deus vult. God wills it. Nobles kneel, peasants weep, and men tear strips of cloth to sew crosses onto their tunics. What begins here is more than a military expedition. It is a spiritual wildfire. Across Europe, lords mortgage lands, knights abandon estates, and peasants leave fields untended. Families part, perhaps forever. In a matter of months, the Pope's words summon not one army, but a movement. This is the spark that lights 2 centuries of holy war. 97. Siege of Nicaea, First Crusade. The Crusader host, swollen with tens of thousands of knights, foot soldiers, and pilgrims, marches into Byzantine lands. Their first great target, Nicaea, capital of the Seljuk Turks in Anatolia. The siege begins in May. Catapults hurl stones, battering rams crash against gates, and towers of timber crawl toward the walls. The defenders respond with fire, arrows, and boiling oil. For weeks, screams echo from both sides. But behind the walls, a secret deal is struck. Emperor Alexios III Komnenos negotiates the city's surrender directly. One morning, the Crusaders awake to see imperial banners flying where they expected smoke and plunder. The Byzantines march in, the gates close to their allies. The Crusaders feel betrayed. They had bled, starved, and died at the walls, only to be denied spoils. Though the road into Anatolia now lies open, trust between East and West begins to unravel. Suspicion and resentment will haunt them in every campaign to come. 97. Battle of Dorylaeum. After Nicaea, the Crusader army splits into columns to better forage the barren Anatolian lands. Bohemond of Taranto leads one vanguard across the dry plains, unaware that the Seljuk Sultan Kilij Arslan is waiting. On July 1st, waves of Turkish horse archers descend. Their arrows blot out the sun, cutting down knights and unarmored pilgrims alike. Panic surges. Wagons are overturned. Women and children huddle beneath shields. Knights form desperate circles to withstand the rain of death. For hours, the Crusaders teeter on collapse, until salvation comes thundering over the hills. The second column, led by Godfrey of Bouillon, Raymond of Toulouse, and Bishop Adhemar, slams into the Turkish flank. The Seljuks are caught between 2 steel tides. Their formations shatter, and Kilij Arslan flees. The victory is total, but the warning is dire. This land will not be yielded easily. The Turks will harry them, starve them, and break the weak whenever they can. Every league eastward is bought with blood. 98. Siege of Antioch. The Crusaders march on to Antioch, a city whose walls rise higher than any fortress they had seen. To take it would be to open the road to Jerusalem. To fail would doom the entire expedition. The siege lasts 7 months. Food runs out, and famine becomes their greatest foe. Knights boil horse hides for broth. Men gnaw leather and bark, desertion spreads like rot, and morale collapses. Yet still, the ring of siege holds. At last, treachery tips the scales. A discontented guard opens a tower gate. Crusaders swarm the walls in the night, slaughtering as they go. Antioch falls, but their victory curdles into terror within days. A massive Muslim relief army under Kerboga of Mosul arrives, encircling the Crusaders in the very city they had taken. Now besiegers become the besieged, half dead from hunger. Then, a miracle, or a deception, emerges. A peasant named Peter Bartholomew claims to find the Holy Lance, the spear that pierced Christ. Whether relic or trick, it galvanizes the army. They march out, ragged and starving, yet aflame with faith. Against all odds, Kerboga's army collapses in confusion and retreat. Antioch is theirs, but tens of thousands are dead, and the survivors are hollowed by starvation. This is no triumph. It is survival by miracle. 989. Siege of Jerusalem. 2 years after Clermont, the Crusaders stand before their ultimate prize, Jerusalem. But the city's walls rise high, and the summer sun burns mercilessly. Water is scarce, morale fragile. Still, they prepare. Timber dragged from distant forests is shaped into siege towers. Engines creak into place. On July 15th, the assault begins. Ladders rise, stones fly, and shouts echo across the battlements. Knights drag themselves upward, shields locked against falling rocks. At last, breaches are forced. Crusaders pour into the holy city, and fury consumes them. For 2 days, the streets run red. Muslims and Jews alike are cut down. Raymond of Aguilers would later write, "The streets were covered in the bodies of the dead, and the blood reached to the bridles of the horses." The massacre is savage, but to the Crusaders it is proof of divine judgment. From this slaughter, the kingdom of Jerusalem is born. A crown is set upon Godfrey of Bouillon, not as king, but as defender of the Holy Sepulchre. For the first time in centuries, Jerusalem is in Christian hands. For the peoples of the East, it is a wound that will never close. 9. Battle of Acre Sanguinis, the Field of Blood. North of Antioch, Prince Roger leads 700 knights and 3,000 infantry against the Artukid army of Ilghazi. The Crusaders are surrounded, their flanks shattered by waves of cavalry. Roger falls with most of his men. Chroniclers record the battlefield carpeted with corpses. The Principality of Antioch is crippled, and Muslim forces regain the initiative in northern Syria. 47. Siege of Lisbon, Second Crusade. While the Second Crusade struggles in the Levant, a fleet of English, Flemish, and German crusaders aids King Afonso I of Portugal in besieging Lisbon. After months of bombardment and blockade, the city falls. It is one of the few lasting successes of the Second Crusade, a Reconquista victory rather than a Holy Land triumph. Siege of Damascus, Second Crusade. The Crusader kings Louis VII of France and Conrad III of Germany march on Damascus, hoping to capture the city as a base for further campaigns. Instead, poor planning and shifting alliances doom the effort. After only 4 days of failed assaults, the Crusaders retreat in humiliation. The defeat destroys much of the Crusade's prestige and strengthens Muslim unity. 7. Battle of Montgisard. Saladin, with 26,000 men, advances toward Jerusalem. King Baldwin IV, ravaged by leprosy, rides with only 500 knights and a few thousand infantry. Outside Montgisard, Baldwin's forces catch Saladin's army strung out along the road. The Crusaders charge with the relic of the True Cross at their head. Saladin's army collapses in panic, and the Sultan barely escapes. It is one of the most brilliant tactical victories of the Crusader states, but it will not be repeated. Battle of Hattin, the Great Disaster. Saladin draws the Crusader army away from water, encircling them near the horns of Hattin. Under the scorching sun, the Christians suffer without food or drink. Muslim archers rain arrows on the parched, exhausted knights. The Crusaders break. King Guy of Jerusalem is captured. The relic of the True Cross is taken. Within months, Jerusalem surrenders to Saladin. Chronicler Ernul writes, "The kingdom was left with nothing but the bare name." Siege of Acre, Third Crusade. After 2 years of siege, the key port of Acre is starving. The Crusader army swells with the arrival of Richard the Lionheart of England and Philip II of France. Disease ravages both sides, but the pressure on the defenders grows unbearable. When Acre surrenders in July, tensions flare over ransom negotiations for Muslim prisoners. Impatient with delays, Richard orders the execution of 2,700 captives before the city walls, a grim signal of his determination. Acre becomes the main Crusader base in the Levant. 91. Battle of Arsuf. Marching south along the coast, Richard faces Saladin's harassment by horse archers. For days, the Crusaders resist the urge to break formation. Finally, near Arsuf, Richard gives the order. The knights charge. The shock of heavy cavalry smashes Saladin's flank. The Muslim army retreats in good order, but the road to Jaffa is secured. Chronicler Ambrose calls it a day when the lion's courage roared across the plain. 1202-1204, Fourth Crusade and sack of Constantinople. Meant to strike at Egypt as a gateway to Jerusalem, the crusade becomes entangled in Venetian politics. Diverted to Constantinople, the Crusaders storm the Byzantine capital in April 1204. For 3 days, the city is looted, churches desecrated, and treasures carried off to the west. The sack cripples the Byzantine Empire and deepens the rift between Eastern and Western Christianity, a wound that never truly heals. 21. Fifth Crusade, Egyptian Campaign. Targeting Egypt as the key to retaking Jerusalem, Crusaders under King John of Brienne capture Damietta in 1219 after a long siege. But in 1221, advancing toward Cairo, they are trapped by flooding Nile waters and cut off from supplies. Forced to surrender, the Crusaders trade Damietta back for safe passage. Chronicler Oliver of Paderborn laments, "We had Egypt in our grasp, and through our folly, it slipped away." 44. Battle of La Forbie. A rare alliance of Crusaders, the Kingdom of Jerusalem, and Muslim forces from Damascus faces Khwarezmian mercenaries allied with Egypt. The Christians are overwhelmed in a 2-day slaughter. Over 90% of the Crusader army is killed or captured. The crushing loss ends any hope of mounting large-scale offensive operations in the Holy Land. 48. 1254. Seventh Crusade, Louis IX in Egypt. Louis IX of France lands at Damietta in 1249, quickly taking the city. But at Mansoura, the Mamluks fight street to street, blocking the Crusader advance. Louis is captured in 1250 and ransomed. Louis remains in the east for 4 years, strengthening fortifications in the Crusader states, but no major gains are made. The Mamluks, meanwhile, grow in strength and ambition. 60. Battle of Ain Jalut. Mongols versus Mamluks. Though not a direct Crusader battle, Ain Jalut changes the balance of power. The Mamluks defeat the Mongols, halting their expansion into the Levant. This ensures the Mamluks remain the dominant Muslim power the Crusaders must face. 1272. Ninth Crusade, Edward I's expedition. Prince Edward of England arrives with a small force, launching raids along the coast. Negotiations with the Mongols for a joint offensive fail, and Edward returns home when news reaches him of his father's illness. This is the last significant Crusader expedition to the Holy Land. The Crusader states are now on the defensive. Siege of Acre, the end. The Mamluk Sultan Al-Ashraf Khalil gathers an overwhelming army to crush the last major Crusader stronghold. For 6 weeks, siege towers and mangonels batter Acre's walls. The defenders, Templars, Hospitallers, and townsfolk fight street by street. On May 18th, the city falls. Some knights hold out in the Templar fortress for 10 more days before it too is destroyed. The surviving Crusaders flee to Cyprus. With the Acre's fall, the Crusader presence in the Holy Land ends. Chronicler Guillaume de Nangis writes, "Thus the kingdom of the Franks in Syria was wholly overthrown. From the dusty plains of Hattin to the burning streets of Acre, the Crusades were fought not just with swords, but with faith, ambition, and betrayal. They left a legacy written in stone and memory, ruined castles, altered maps, and centuries of tension between East and West. And though the banners of the cross no longer flew over Jerusalem, The stories of these battles would echo in Europe's halls for generations to come.